Are the Reeves leading fun church today? That is really going to be fun. And if Victoria can't really keep a leash on Andrew, it's going to be a lot of fun. Somehow or another, they've been hoodwinked into becoming children's church leaders. What a blessing. Yes. Johnny Jr. next. And if Ned and Betsy attended church every once in a while, we'd get them in there, but they just don't even come anymore. No, they're like me. They have. And pray for the Ned and Betsy this week. Now, during Sunday school, Ned carried on like it was going to be a tough week for him, but actually, Betsy's having surgery this week, so I think it might be a little bit harder for her, but you know the way we men do. If the man flu, it's a whole lot worse than Daddy always had the flu. He never had a cold. If you tell somebody you got a cold, they don't care. You tell them you got the flu or the pneumonia, then they'll show you a little bit of compassion. So pray for Betsy. She's having Friday. She's having surgery. We all need each other's prayer. Kind of don't be nosy, but kind of be aware of what's going on in everybody's life. Lots of things. We need each other's prayer. Encourage each other. Strengthen each other. Pour yourself into each other. That's what this is about today. In 2020, today's message is to encourage you. I want you to, for all of us, let's kind of it's something that we let fall by the wayside. We have a tendency to kind of withdraw or become, I would say this for me, I have a tendency to become self-centered, to become selfish, to think of me. Of course, I was only being facetious about Ned. He's going to be her number one supporter this week, but I know that the kids are going to be praying for them too and concerned. And then there's going to be the recovery afterwards, so just pray about all of that. So he's going to be pouring himself into her, and she's going to be pouring herself into the moment and the situation. There is something that perhaps that we can do, something that of ourselves that we can give, or be or do that would be important to them or would be helpful to them this week. We all go through those times, those situations. If we're not careful, we will lose connection. We'll lose contact. We will feel that sometimes knowing too many people or having too many obligations or social contacts can be something that we just don't have time for. That they can automatically or without our notice fall to the wayside. We can forget to pay attention to others. Yes, you have a full life. You have things that concern you, things that you're praying about, things that are very important to you. I'm so glad we have a God who can pay attention to all those things and yet be very close to us. He can be very intimate with us. He doesn't get distracted. The Bible says he doesn't slumber or sleep. And he's watchful and he cares. And he wants us to, in some sense, we are not so supernatural that we can follow him exactly. But he says, I kind of want you to get the idea. We're going to be looking at some things. Here's a picture of a scene from the ministry of Jesus. It looks like he's about to touch someone that nobody else would touch. As a matter of fact, this person had the audacity to draw near to Jesus and to get Jesus' attention, though he was forbidden to do so. And that every cultural standard and every societal standard forbade him from having any contact with anybody, and Jesus is just about to touch him. You and I need to be able to be willing to touch the untouchable, to love the unlovable. Because there are times when I'm untouchable, there's times when I'm unlovable, there's times when I'm difficult or hard to get along with. There are times, that's when Paul talks about husbands and wives, he says, just put up with each other. Sometimes that's if that's the best you can do. Yes, love each other, care for each other, be kind to one another. And he says sometimes you're going to get to that place where you just put up with each other, you just get by. He said, do that. Life is full of so many tastes and flavors and so many colors and so many shapes and situations. We need to be on our toes. And, it's unusual. We come here, one of the things that we do as Christian people or Baptist people, church people, we come, and it is important that we exercise each other and, be good, be kind, obey God, follow the Jesus that's in your heart. We need that encouragement. It's not something that we do naturally. We need help and assistance. One of the things that the church does, let's get together and let's have a rally where we look at each other and say, step up, toughen up. Or what can we do to help prop you up? How can we hold you up? How can we build you up? Because for us, it's important to get together and say, okay, let's look around. Who needs help today? Who needs a smile? Who needs a hug? Who needs a handshake? Who needs a kind word? And so I leave here with those things, with my pockets full often. More often than not, just exactly what I needed. Something that touched me. The very first church I pastored, I was 20 years old. Terry was 18. We had just gotten married a few months earlier. And I had been studying pastors and preachers and churches, but I didn't know much. And I didn't know much of this church. It was going to turn out to be a wonderful church and a wonderful experience for me, for us. But I didn't know that they had been through a difficult, very difficult time. The very first church that I pastored, when I came in, I found out that their prior pastor, the one who just preceded me, and the congregation had gotten into a situation of conflict. And it came to a situation where the church body divided. They split, they separated, and the church became a casualty of what I've seen in many churches over my pastoral walk. The church was decimated. The attendance was collapsed. And many of the people left the church and just didn't go anywhere. And a bunch of the people left with the former pastor. And he went down the road and got him a little storefront there. And they took a big chunk of the congregation. When I got there, they just had a handful of people there left in the church. And they were all hurting. And a number of the people that I visited were people that I knew didn't go to church there anymore. And there was one family that I visited they were deeply hurt and wounded. And they just, on Sunday, they sat at home. They didn't go to church anywhere. And they had been deeply hurt, brokenhearted, because their church had crumbled to pieces and scattered to the wind. It takes a long time for a church to recover from a split or a conflict. God's people, Jesus said, by this shall all men know that you're my disciples, by your love for each other. But when we get to a situation where we hate each other, it has the opposite effect. People in the community begin to doubt and question whether we are God's people at all. If we are truly Christian people, if we really are good people, if we can't even get along with each other. That bunch of people down there at the Baptist church, they say they're going to go to heaven and live forever. They can't even sit on the same pew with each other down here. It takes a long time. It's not just a matter of the bad reputation drifting away, or for the people in the community to forget or to decide to become forgiving. But it takes a long time. Let me tell you this. Listen very carefully. When a church divides or a church splits or a church goes through a time of conflict and disaster like that, it takes a long time for God to get over it. God is not going to just come in and start blessing the church like that and filling the pews up again. It's going to take a long time. Well, Terry and I were invited last year, back in October, to go back to their church for their homecoming. There wasn't a seat in the house, was it? The choir was full of people. And I looked out there over that little church. It's a smaller church building than ours. but it was full. There were even people sitting back in the library and people sitting back in the Sunday school classroom. It was a full house. That was homecoming. I understand that. But I could look at that and I said, well, it's taken over 40 years for this church to kind of get back to where these people look like they like each other again. I didn't see any traces or any images of their former conflict. I was only there a little over 3.5 years as their pastor. Went on to seminary. Remember that older couple that I told you about that just quit going to church? And their son and daughter-in-law quit going to church there too. Now during that time when I was pastor there, their daughter-in-law had cancer. It's a courageous story and it's a heartbreaking story. This frail little tiny little girl was a young mother and wife, had a little baby girl. And I've never seen anybody with all my life and all my ministry who had more courage. Most of the time when I saw her, she was in the hospital after having a tremendous, terrible surgery. And I would go to see her at Vanderbilt University. When Terry and I were there at homecoming, and she died, and I preached her funeral while I was there. She lost that battle. But when Terry and I were there for homecoming at the first church I ever pastored, I was talking with a young lady. She had her little children there. She was just a little tiny thing. And that was that little girl. That was her daughter. And she's very faithful at that church. And she attends all the time, and she's very active. And she's a fine, good Christian young woman and mother. I said, I knew your mom and dad. I preached your mother's funeral. She doesn't remember her mother. When she was battling cancer, she discovered that she was going to have a baby. Boy, what mixed feelings about that. It takes a long time for that to happen. I remember one of the things that I tried to do, and there's a reason for telling this story. I've told this before, and I believe the last time I told it, I don't even think I finished it. I remember watching the tape again. I said, well, I started that story. I guess I do a lot of those kind of things in my sermons. But since we had been smitten, and our congregation, our pew, most of our pews were empty, and it didn't look like anybody was going to come back that had left. And it looked like a lot of the people that were still going were dying. They were going away that way. And when we went back to homecoming, I guess we probably saw, how many, 7 or 8 or 10 people there that were there from that time. But I had a notion, for some reason or other, I had 4 or 5 of those cassette players. I think it was the new electronic rage at the time. And I had a reel-to-reel tape recorder too. And every Sunday morning, I would, right here on the altar, I would put 3 or 4 on this side and 5 or 6 on that side, tape recorders that had hour-long tapes in them. And before I started preaching or before our music service started, I'd punch record on all of those and get them started, and I started preaching. And I had made a deal with our congregations. We had people in our community who couldn't go to church. They were shut-ins. There were lots of elderly people, and some of them were members of the Church of Christ, and some people were members of the Methodist Church, and some people were not members anywhere. Some were members of our church. But I had about 8 or 10 people who lived in our surrounding area, and I made a deal with my church. I said, I'll go every week. I was still going to school then. So I'll deliver these cassette players with our service recorded on it. I'll take it by to them. They'll get to hear what we sound like when we sing. Probably you think, well, I don't know if I want to be forced to listen to that or not. And listen to my poor old messages. I was just learning how to preach at that time as a pastor. But more than anything else, when I went to deliver that tape, I sat and visited with them, and I talked with them, and I prayed with them. And I had a deal with my church. If I take them out and scatter them, I need some of y'all to go and pick them up for next Sunday. So I would visit all the shut-ins. There were 8 or 10 of them, families. And then one of my church members, or 2 or 3 or 4, would go. And by Sunday, when they would come back, all those would be collected back. And so they visited them too. visiting them. And it didn't matter if they listened to the service, or if the song service was good, or if the sermon was good. They seemed to enjoy our company more than anything else. I remember Miss Ford Bain. She was a dear, precious little lady, lived in a trailer just down the road from the church. And she was a steadfast member of the Church of Christ. But I became her pastor just simply because I went to see her. And I remember popping in one time. She was just a little bitty old tiny trailer lady. And I remember going there one day. I knocked on the door of her trailer and I heard her going, "Oh, oh." That was before those little things you could put around your neck. I went there and she was laying on the floor by her bed. Now we're in there, like I said, I was about 20, 21 years old. And I still was built like a football player then. Not like old football, like a football now. And I remember there, I went in there and there she said, "Oh, Brother Dennis." And I fallen and I can't get up. Well, she didn't say that, but that's all I hear now. And I picked her up. She didn't feel like she weighed more than a feather. And I put her back in the bed. I said, "Are you hurt? Do you need me to call anybody?" I called her son. And she said, "No, I'm fine." I said, I ain't heavy enough to cause no damage when I fall, but I just couldn't get up. I got her all tucked in, called her son. And I said, "You sure you're all right? You ain't hurt nowhere. I'll take you to the hospital if you want me to." So, my, those memories like that. Being able to touch, connect, to contact people. I remember I talked a little bit about our checking your daily Bible reading a couple of Sundays ago. You know what you used to fill in whether you're going to stay? We used to call it staying for preaching. You staying for preaching? Yeah, staying for preaching. Going to Sunday school? Staying for preaching. Worship service. But to have something else on there, you were asked to put how many contacts you made during the week. How many contacts you made. People didn't know what that meant. I said, if you see somebody at Walmart and you speak to them, if you have a conversation at the bank with somebody, whoever you talk to, you don't have to be talking to them about God or Jesus. You don't have to be on the knees having prayer. But when you see someone and you share yourself and you smile and you talk about what's going on, how you doing? What do you think about this weather? Don't you hope we get some more rain? I said, that's a contact. And I said, Jesus is in you. And when you make contact with somebody, they may or may not be impressed with who you are or what you're like or how good looking I am or not. But Jesus really is in you. That's one of the best reasons for coming and being a part of the church is because Jesus is in almost everybody there. And that's when I feel closer to Him, when I'm with you, than any other time. Making contacts. I want you to think of yourself during the week contacting people. Let's go on, Carter. Thank you for that special assignment that you did earlier. In Matthew chapter 8, verse 1, it says, when Jesus came down from the mountain, great multitudes followed him. Remember, the multitudes followed Jesus, but the multitudes never believed in Jesus. The multitudes never gave their life to Jesus. It was always the one, like this one right here. And behold, a leper came and worshipped him. And he said, Lord, if you will, you can make me clean. In other words, if you just want to. Jesus reached out and touched him. He said, I will be clean. Jesus touched him. I've seen some lepers. Let me tell you, I want to tell you the truth from my heart. I've seen lots of lepers. Saw lots of leprosy when I was in the nation of India. There's a disease that I think they've got a grip on it now, and they've begun to see it become eradicated. But back in the 70s, it was still growing strong. Lots of people. And listen, I want to tell you from my heart, the first thing that came to my mind was not, hey, let's go touch that person. That wasn't what I was thinking about. Let's go hug him, her. Let's go spend some time with that person. It looks like someone you want to avoid. Jesus touched him, and immediately his leprosy was cleansed. And Jesus said to him, don't tell anyone, but go your way and show yourself to the priest and offer the gift that Moses commanded for a testimony. He says, if you'll be obedient, if you'll obey God, And he says, you, when people say, go show yourself. And you see, it's not so much of what you say and what comes out of your mouth, it's who you are. He says, when they see you that you don't have leprosy, he said, that's all you'll need to say. You don't have to even tell this story or how it happened. It'll be a testimony to God. What a wonderful story. People were saying, ew, don't touch him. Or what's he doing here? Get that guy out of here. And Jesus reached out there and touched him. The touch of Jesus makes a difference. When you and I touch someone or contact with them, it may or may not make a difference. They may not be impressed with me or with you. There may not be any strengths or qualities in our lives that are so outrageously wonderful that people are even impressed with it at all. But if what we believe is true, Jesus lives in you, and he's able to get out, to communicate, he's able to contact, he's able to connect with people simply because he's in our life. I see things coming out of my life, colors and sounds and wonderful things coming out of my life, not because I've generated them, but because Jesus is in me. Let's go on to the rest of the scripture of this story. Here's the rest of the story, Paul Harvey would say. And when Jesus entered Capernaum, there came to him a centurion with an urgent request. He's a Roman guard. Not just a guard, but he's a Roman officer. And the centurion said, Lord, my servant is at home sick with the palsy. When someone was sick and grievously ill and they didn't know what it was, they just called it a palsy. We have a disease we call cerebral palsy today, and it doesn't mean this person had cerebral palsy. He could have. But if they didn't know what it was, they said it's some kind of a palsy. My servant is sick. He has a palsy, and he's grievously tormented. And Jesus replied, I will come and heal him. I kind of see Jesus standing up and dusting out his lap and doing his hands. Okay, let's go. He said, I'll come and heal him. The centurion answered, Lord, I am not worthy for you to come under my roof, but just speak the word and my servant will be healed. For I am a man under authority, having soldiers under me. I say to this man, go, and he goes. To another, come, and he comes. To my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard that, he marveled and said to them that followed, truly I've never seen such faith, not even in Israel. Now you know the rest of that story, the rest of that story, don't you? Jesus said to that centurion, he says, well, go on back home. Your servant is healed. And when that centurion pulled up in the driveway, as we would say, when he got home, the members of his household had rushed out to meet him, and they said, he's up, he's had taken food, he's better, he's healed. It's just amazing. Just a few minutes ago. And the centurion says, but just about how long ago was it? And they said, well, it's just about this long. And he knew that it was the very moment that Jesus said, all right. Now, I like this because I don't think you and I that our life is going to be of any value or quality without the touch of Jesus. And he's touched us. He's done something in my life. And I believe he's done something in your life. He has made contact with you. And it's not just that he saved me or that I'm saved or that I belong to him or that I now believe in him or I'm trying to serve him. It's that when I see other people, I feel very strongly when I see other people and I say, what you need is what I've got. You know that feeling. That if you just knew the Lord, if you just had contact with Jesus like he's contacted me, I'm not telling you that I'm anything or that my life is anything special. But someone special, someone unique, and someone very, very important has taken notice of me for some reason. He's touched me. He's contacted. He's connected with me. I'm connected with him, and that is one of the most wonderful things that's ever happened in my life. And so, as we think of other people, I hope, and the point of this message today is that you and I have more ways to make connection with people or to share our faith and to share what God's doing in our lives than any people in human history. I'm still recording what we do so that people can hear it. And it's not just what we're saying or singing or the songs we're praying. Though, Ronnie, that song, I've heard that many times. And I've heard Danny sing it. And it's a glorious song. Thank you for singing it. But one day, when we get to heaven, somebody's going to come up to us and say, thank you for giving to the Lord. I was a life that's been changed. What a wonderful song for this message. When you make connection and contact with people, it's Jesus in you reaching out to them, and it can make a difference. You may say, well, what can I do? How can I help? What difference can I make? Well, it's not you. It's not me. Jesus really does abide in you and me. And when we make contact with people in the most simple ways, He can touch them. I like this because here's two different ways. I think of the leper as the man who was in church, and Jesus put His hand right on him. This centurion servant was like the guy, he wasn't in church. He'd never been to church. He'd never met Jesus. He wasn't even local. And yet Jesus touched him. And so I think today, Lord, yes, I want to touch you that you're here this morning in the name of Jesus. But there are people out there and people who will never come here, people who will never sit in our pews. I counted our pews this week. I guess I've done it before. There are 37 pews in here, and 7 people can sit in each pew rather comfortably. Counting the choir, and the choir pews are a little bit longer than the others. 37 pews, 7 or 8 people. Now, we couldn't sit down 7 people with Danny. And Randy doesn't sit in a pew, but do the math. And let me tell you this. If there was someone sitting in every single seat on every pew here, listen to this carefully. If someone next Sunday morning was sitting in every place, we need to be touching and connecting with more people than even that. We need to be making contact with more people than we see here on Sunday morning. And we're doing that. I think we're doing the best that we can. Or maybe not the best, but we're doing, I believe, a successful job. Let's look at some of these things. I want to show you. Just hit some of these things. Hit that. When I typed in telephone, I got some rotary dial telephones. I didn't know if everybody knew what it was. But this is what I call an old people phone. Really big numbers on it. It's not cordless, but we know what it is. There's a cell phone. That's probably your cell phone. We got email and postcards. And we still have the U.S. Postal Service. These are ways which you and I can connect with people. That we can contact them. We can say hello to them, or we can encourage them. We can reach out to them and have some kind of thread. It is something that none of it will ever be wasted. Let me tell you a story. I think it was probably before Johnny and Jeannie came to Oak Park. Y'all remember Miss Eleanor McCullough? You remember Miss Eleanor? I didn't. Miss Eleanor died. She went to be with the Lord while I was there. But Miss Eleanor had been a Bible school teacher, Sunday school teacher, very faithful church member, but she was advanced in years. You know, like Henry. She couldn't do a lot of those things anymore, but she never missed church. But every Saturday, well, I was pastor there for 10 years, the whole time that she was alive, I knew that about 3 or 4:30 in the afternoon that we was going to get a call at the Bain house. We lived on Minor Hill Road. 312 Minor Hill Road, out there in Flint. And I knew our phone was going to ring. And Carice might answer the phone. She'd say, hello, Miss Eleanor. Or Jonathan would answer for me, or Terry. And I'd say, Terry, that's Miss Eleanor. Would you get it? She said, no, you need it more than I do. I said, okay. Miss Eleanor called us every Saturday, her pastor and wife and the children, said, just want to remind y'all to be in Sunday school tomorrow and be in church tomorrow. We said, Miss Eleanor, Lord willing, we're going to be there. She had her list, and she called everybody in our church, and she called a lot of people that weren't in our church, and people, her family members, and she said, and she spent a couple hours every Saturday calling everybody. Miss Eleanor called people. I missed her calls after she was gone. And I wish I had a dozen just like her, who realized that just doing something simple like that. And we'd get to church one Sunday and said, did Miss Eleanor call you yesterday? No, Miss Eleanor didn't call me. Well, I knew that her pastor needed to go by and see her because she was either sick or dead. If she didn't call everybody, because she always called us. Let's go on, Carter. Now, I made a clip of this, and this is from last Sunday. And I went, by the time I got to lunch last Sunday, and Friday night I showed this to Danny and Liz, and it says that there are 195 views. Now, some people may have watched it a minute or 2 minutes. Some people watched it while it was live, and other people watched it during the week. But 195 people who have phones or tablets or computers looked at what we did here at church. They were part of us, and there are people that are watching right now. How are y'all? Good morning. We're glad to have you. And they listened to us sing. Donna Serta listened last Sunday, and she typed in a comment. She said, good singing. Good singing. She didn't say good sermon, but she said good singing. Sermon was a little bit long. Maybe she might have said that, but she didn't. She's kind-hearted. I'm sure Donna, if she's feeling well today, is watching us right now. This is like the centurion's servant. People who are not here that you can't actually touch or shake your hand or put your hands on, but they're out there, and Jesus can still touch them. And if Jesus doesn't touch them through us, he'll touch them through somebody else. Let's go, 195 people. That's a pretty good crowd. We have a Sunday bulletin. We not only have it here for us at church, but it's a part of our newsletter. It also goes out through email and over the internet. Our prayer warrior, the people we're praying for. It's our prayer list. That's also scattered to many, many other people who visit our online presence. This is what the first page of our newsletter looks like. And we don't print it out, but it goes out to people who can read it on their phone and on their tablet, and on their computers and pads. This is one way that we're trying to connect with people. And it's not just vanity. Anytime we make touch, or someone looks at it, or someone sees it, or someone handles it, or it makes connection, it's a genuine connection. It's a good idea. Let's go on. This is our church webpage. We still have many people who visit that site every week to learn about us. They can hear all the messages that are preached here at our church, all the songs that are sung, and all the prayers that are prayed. They can see them on video here. Here is our church Facebook group and our church Facebook page. There are many, many people who are never here, who have never been here, who have never met me and never met you. I have a very good friend who attended the same school that we did when she was young, and she lives in Michigan now. But we're good friends on Facebook, and we stay in touch. I have a friend that I was in elementary school with, a dear friend who lives over in South Carolina now, and she always interacts with what's going on with us and our prayer list. I have family members, Terry's mom and dad, touch base with us. They keep up with what's going on here because it ministers to them. In these ways, let's go on. There are so many different ways that you could probably think of, or that you are already using and utilizing. There are people that we can touch like Jesus touched the leper. But there are a lot of people that they're out there somewhere, just like that centurion servant. There is no distance. They can't be too far away for Jesus to make a difference in their lives. And you see, the centurion was the point of contact. You and I can be that person who's in the presence of Jesus, who says, there's somebody out here, Jesus, who needs your touch. And Jesus said, all right. And it can make the difference. Yes, we wish that there were more people here, but they only needed one centurion to make a difference in that man's life. It made a difference in his whole household. I believe it made a difference for all of them for eternity. Let God use you. Pour yourself out. Look around. Who can I speak to? Who can I call on my phone? Who could I write a note or a card or a letter to? Who could I speak to, or who could I make contact or connect with so that the Jesus who lives in me can touch them and change their lives and help them? I know that sometimes we think, oh, it's me and my problems. Listen, you'll never be more unhappy or more miserable when all you can think about is you. Yes, you have problems. I know that I do. I have problems. I have difficulties. We have family problems. We face difficulties. But things get very lonely and they get very, very hard when that's all that I can think about. I need to pour my life into a God who is without size. He's bigger than I am. He's bigger than all my problems. And He blesses me and makes my burden lighter when I think about others. Jesus said there are really only two commandments. Love the Lord your God with all your heart, your mind, your soul, your body. He says the second one's like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. He says those are really the only two that matter. They cover everything else. Let's love God. But then when we love others, look and see what you've got in your hand. What have you got in your pocket? What's at your house, in your car, in your truck? What do you have at your disposal that you can use to be in more than just here? But you can be here, and you can be out there where the centurion servant is too. But you can reach that person out there that you can't even see, that you don't even know, that you've never even met. If we don't think that that's an important ministry, we've missed something. Listen, we here at the Walnut Grove Baptist Church, we're still outgrowing and overcoming our history too. We're still in the process of outliving our reputation. We're still looking to God, a God who's probably looking down, and I believe it's still going to be years to come before we're going to be in a place where God is going to bless us again like He did in the past. For right now, I don't think He trusts us. I don't think He trusts us. He loves us. He loves us. But He doesn't trust us with His greatest blessings. We've got to prove ourselves a little bit more. As I said, that little church, my first little church, it took them over 40 years to get past their past. And that's not so much about how the neighbors felt about them as I believe it's about how God felt about them. Would you give yourself away? Let me pray for you. Lord Jesus, I want to thank you for what you've done in my life. Never let me forget that and become so tied up in my own world that I do not pour myself, the new me that you've created, and the me that has you in Him, into the lives of others. Help us to care and to do. And just as that centurion said, there's someone that I care about, Lord Jesus, who needs your touch. But you don't have to, I'm not even worthy for you to hear my prayer or to answer my prayer or to do anything that I ask you to do, but I'm just asking you, and you don't even have to leave where you are. All you have to do is speak the word. Father, speak to us today and through us and in us. Touch our hearts to your will and way, for we ask it in your name. Amen. Brother Danny, what's our hymn of invitation today?
347.